Welcome to High Talk. Today, my guest is Mr. Andrew Cox, General Manager for International Markets, Meat and Livestock Australia. Welcome to the show, sir. So, my first question to you, what is the significance of China's decision to lift import restrictions on Australian beef producers, and what potential impact could this have on the industry as a whole?
Well, it's really great news that the suspensions have been lifted. China is a very important market for Australian beef exporters, and so this news is obviously welcomed for those establishments that have been reinstated. But it's also good news for the many companies that utilize beef from these plants, many of them Chinese companies, distributors, importers, restaurants and retailers. And ultimately, it's also good news both for the Australian beef producer and also, of course, Chinese consumers who can now enjoy more of the delicious and healthy protein that is Australian beef.
What do the Chinese like in terms of Australian beef or other meat products?
Fundamentally, there's a lot of trust that's been built over time between our industry and Chinese customers. Our product is well known for its shelf life, for its food safety standards, for its eating quality standards. Chinese consumers and customers know that when you buy Australian beef, you have a consistent eating quality every time. And we do a lot of research with Chinese consumers and customers who have a great affinity with our product. And that's been built over many decades of great relationship building between Australian companies, Chinese companies, and Chinese consumer.
So when you promote your products in China, how would you introduce your strengths and competitive advantage of Australian beef in the Chinese market, and how Meat and Livestock Australia plans to leverage these opportunities?
Yeah, so fundamentally, we work with those who are in the supply chain to help promote the product. So quite simply, that means working with those restaurant companies, with retailers in China, with distributors, and of course, with Australian exporters. And we do work with all of those supply chain participants to make sure that the end result is good for the consumer, right? Because if you're giving the consumer a good outcome in the food industry, i.e. tasty, healthy, and tender in the case of meat, then they have a good experience, they'll come back next time. So we do a lot of work with chefs, with retailers and distributors. We educate them about the provenance of Australia. We've hosted a number of Chinese chefs over the years to help them understand where the product comes from. And we do a lot of work in that promotional space to try and keep growing the strong affinity between Chinese consumers and the product, really. And we do a lot of work with the trade. For example, recently there was a large trade show in Shanghai called Xia Cheng. We had around 40 Australian exporters there working with trade customers. Later this year, there's another large trade show coming up, of course, CIIE. There'll be more Australian exporters there in the beef side alongside their counterparts in wine and other industries.